stories of Quran, the stories of Quran, the stories of the glorious Quran, the stories of Quran, the stories of Quran, the stories of the glorious Quran.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen, amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah, wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah, salatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah, wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah. Dear viewers of Madani Channel, once again we bring another beautiful and faith-enlightening story before you from the stories of Quran. Our today's topic again is a very interesting one, and it might be something new for a lot of our viewers. And this story again holds a lot of moral lessons for us. What moral lessons they are, we will inshallah azza wa jal try to cover them at the end of our episode. What is today's topic? Today's topic, dear viewers of Madani Channel, is regarding a very special calf, a calf of Samri. Who was Samri? He was an individual of Bani Israel, and we will know more about him as today's episode goes along. And what circumstances there were when he created this calf, about which we will be discussing today, and which prophet of Allah or prophets of Allah were in those times who counted him, and about whom we will be discussing today, insha'Allah azza wa jal. We will also come to know about them after listening to the virtue of sending peace and salutations upon the noble Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam. So let's start our episode, today's episode, by listening to a virtue and excellence of reciting Durood-e-Pak, sending peace and salutations upon the noble Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. That the one who likes that Allah Almighty be pleased with him when he is presented in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he should recite Durood upon me in abundance. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam. So coming back to the topic of the day, regarding the Prophet that we covered earlier, who encountered this very individual who was named Samri, who created a calf and he misguided the people of Bani Israel. Who the Prophet was, that was none other than Sayyiduna Musa Kalimullah ala Nabiyyina wa alayhi salatu wassalam, and also his brother Sayyiduna Harun alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, when Bani Israel, after the death of Pharaoh, after the death of Fir'aun, when Bani Israel, they attained freedom and salvation from the oppressions and tyrannies of Fir'aun, then Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to observe i'tikaf, to come on Mount Sinai, on Kohe Tur, and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was on the way when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was coming to Egypt with Bani Israel after Fir'aun was destroyed. Now Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was also promised for a book to be revealed upon him, but for this Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was ordered to come on Mount Sinai and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 30 days and nights, and then additional 10 days were added further. So altogether 40 days Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was commanded to come on Mount Sinai, on Kohe Tur, and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a blessed, a sacred, a holy book would be revealed upon him. So the book which was called Torah, this will be revealed upon him. Therefore, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, to fulfill the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for this holy book to be revealed upon him, he embarks upon the journey to go to Kohe Tur, to go on Mount Sinai. And he appoints his brother Sayyiduna Harun alayhi salatu wasalam as his ambassador to look after the affairs of Bani Israel. So Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he went to Mount Sinai, to Koh Tur, and it is stated in narrations that he spent 40 days over there. Initially it was 30 days and then 10 further days were added. So he alayhi salatu wasalam stayed for the entire month of Zulqa'datul Haram, and then the first 10 days of Zulhijjatul Haram were also added. So from 1st Zulqa'datul Haram up to 10th Zulhijjatul Haram, Sayyiduna Musa Kalimullah ala nabiyyina wa alayhi salatu wasalam, he stayed on Mount Sinai on Koh Tur, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to fulfill the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the holy book Torah to be revealed upon him. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam would worship the entire night, and he alayhi salatu wasalam would observe fast during the day. So this is how Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam spent his 40 days on Koh Tur. And during this tenure of time, he alayhi salatu wasalam did not converse to anyone. He alayhi salatu wasalam did not speak to anyone. All he did was worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would fast throughout the day, and he would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the night. So this is how Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he spent his 40 days. Now on the other hand, as Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Mount Sinai, on the other hand, Bani Israel, Sayyidina Harun alayhi salatu wasalam was appointed over them during this time when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was not physically present over there. Now in this time, what had happened was, there was a person called Samri in Bani Israel. He was a very accursed person. He was a disbeliever and very wicked person. So Samri, he was very sinful person. And after his birth, his mother, with the fear of being taunted by the community, of being insulted by the community, she isolated him from the community, from herself, and hid him in a cave at some distance from the community. And look at the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this very individual, Samri, who was to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he would grow up, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the means of his nourishment, of him growing up in the cave, was that Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam brought him up in the cave. And Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam would feed him in the days of his infancy, in the days of his childhood. So this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the means of Samri for his nourishment, for his growing. The Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam would feed him with his finger. So this is how Samri, he also became acquainted with Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam as well. He also came to know of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. And the interesting fact is that, do you know what his full name was? Samri's full name was Musa Samri. So he also had the name of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam in his name as well. So his full name was Musa Samri. Now Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, he brought up Musa Samri, whereas Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was brought up in the house of Pharaoh, in the house of Fir'aun. So look at the great majestic glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, who was brought up in the house of Fir'aun, in the house of Pharaoh, who was a staunch disbeliever and enemy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he becomes a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on the other hand, Musa Samri, who was to become a staunch disbeliever, someone who would disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who would guide the nation, the people astray as well. He is being nourished and brought up by none other than the chief of the angels, by the leader of angels, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. This is the hidden plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the hidden decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that someone who's being brought up at the house of an infidel, at the house of a disbeliever, he becomes a prophet and someone who is brought up by the leader of the angels, this individual becomes a staunch disbeliever and someone who leads the nation, the people, astray. When a person has been destined with wretched fate eternally, he can never attain piety and he remains unlucky. Even the efforts of those who raise him, they go in vain. You see that Musa Samri, who was brought up by Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, he became pagan, he became a disbeliever. And Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, who was brought up by Pharaoh, by Fir'aun, he became a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Hazrat Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was staying at Mount Sinai and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Samri, he took advantage of the absence of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and created mischief in the land. He misguided people. It is stated that when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam went to Kohe Tur to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he had informed people that he is going to Kohe Tur to converse with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and after this he will be blessed with a holy book. So this holy book will be for you, for Bani Israel. So I will bring this book for you guys. So after 30 days, as we earlier covered, that initially Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was commanded for 30 days and then 10 further days were added. So Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam stayed on the Mount Sinai from 1st Zulqadatul Haram up until 10th Zulhijjatul Haram. So Bani Israel, they waited for the first 30 days, but thereafter what Samri, this accursed individual, he did was that he created a calf and he gathered the ornaments, the jewelry from Bani Israel. Now which jewelry that was, it is stated that this was the jewelry that Bani Israel had gathered, had taken from the Qibtis. And who were Qibtis? They were the people of Fir'aun. So these were Bani Israel who were on the side of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and who were oppressed by Pharaoh. And the people of Pharaoh, they were called Qibtis. So Bani Israel, they had gathered these ornaments and jewelry from Qibtis to use it on their day of Eid. But now, because Fir'aun had destroyed and his people had also destroyed, and Bani Israel, they had gained freedom from the oppressions and tyrannies, from the captivity, from the imprisonment of Pharaoh. So all this jewelry and ornaments that they had taken from them, now they all remained with them, they all stayed with them. So Samri, people gave a lot of importance to him. So after 30 days, when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam did not return back, then Samri, ma'adallah, he led those people to misguidance. And he took all the jewelry from Bani Israel and he molded into a calf. And after this, what he did was that because Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam had brought him up, so he had kept soil, the sand of the hooves of the horse of Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wasalam with him, secured, protected. So he had that soil with him, and after he molded the ornaments and jewelry of Bani Israel into a calf, then he put that soil in the mouth of that calf. And as a result of this, that calf, it started to talk, it started to speak. And this was by the virtue of the blessed soil of the hooves of the horse of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wassalam. Now when the calf started to speak, Samri said to the people of Bani Israel that, "Oh my people, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam has gone to Mount Sinai to see the vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to behold Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas this calf is your Lord, ma'adallah. This calf is your Lord. Therefore, you should worship this calf." Now, Bani Israel, they got misguided by this ill speech of Samri, and they all started to worship the calf that was made by Samri. Now, only Sayyiduna Harun alayhi salatu wasalam and 12,000 people who were with him, they did not admit, they did not consider the calf to be their Lord. They stayed away from this mischief, from this disobedience which rest of the Bani Israel they fell prey to. So Sayyidina Harun alayhi salatu wasalam and 12,000 people, they stayed away from worshipping this calf, and rest of the Bani Israel, they fell prey to worshipping this calf as they were misguided by Samri. Now those people, they would worship this calf and they would prostrate to this calf, thinking that Samri is right, that the calf has started to talk and all our ornaments, all our jewelry, it has come to a good use. So these were the thoughts that were striking their minds, and ma'adallah, they fell prey to the whispers, to the misguidance of Samri. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, the translation of Kanzul Iman is that, and in the absence of Musa, his people molded a calf from their ornaments, a lifeless body making sounds like a cow. Now after 40 days, when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam returned to his town after being privileged of having conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bringing the holy Torah with him, he alayhi salatu wasalam fell in fury. He was furious to see people worshipping a calf instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam placed the blessed Torah on the ground out of anger, out of fury, and started dragging his brother Sayyidina Harun alayhi salatu wasalam by holding him from his hair and beard, and started questioning him that why did you not stop these people from this evil act? Now Sayyidina Harun alayhi salatu wasalam, he apologized to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, as it is mentioned in the Holy Quran. Again, translation from Kanzul Iman, that, O son of my mother, the people thought I was weak and were about to kill me, so make not the enemies laugh at me and include me not amongst the oppressors. Now, after hearing this apology of Sayyidina Harun alayhi salatu wasalam, the anger of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, it faded away. He alayhi salatu wasalam calmed down. He alayhi salatu wasalam supplicated for his brother Sayyidina Harun alayhi salatu wasalam's forgiveness and for mercy upon him. Then Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam broke the calf into pieces, burnt it, and dispersed its pieces into river. Now, dear viewers of Madani Channel, over here, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was furious upon Harun alayhi salatu wasalam, not because of Harun alayhi salatu wasalam, but because of the evil act that his nation was performing. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam had already been informed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding this evil act of his nation. And when he alayhi salatu wasalam came back to his nation after 40 days, he already knew that his nation is indulged in this evil act. So he knew about all this before arriving over there. So his fury, his anger was basically on the people of Bani Israel who had started to worship that calf. So this anger, this fury was only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why at a later stage, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam supplicated for Sayyidina Harun alayhi salatu wasalam as well. So we come to know, dear Islamic brothers, that the anger and the pleasure of the chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are only and solely for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is never for their own nafs, for their own self. Now, what do we learn? What moral lessons do we gain from this beautiful event which is mentioned in the Holy Quran? We learn that Islamic scholars and all those who are nominated at such a post where there are many people under them, they shall never be heedless and negligent in terms of what their subordinates are up to. They should be never unaware of the facts that what their subordinates, people, their nation, they are doing. As in the case of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was absent from his people for 40 days, then the accursed Samri, he took benefit of this and misguided people. So we come to know that we shall never be unaware of our subordinates, of our those people who are under us, those people upon whom we have been appointed. We shall never be unaware of their state of affairs. Otherwise, they can be led misguided by such people who spread mischief in the land. So we have to be very careful in terms of what our subordinates, what our people upon whom we are nominated, what they are up to, and we shall always keep a very close eye on their reform, on their reformation. Otherwise, the deviant people who are already spreading misguidance in the land, they will take full benefit of it and they will misguide them. If we are not active in reforming people, then those who are misguiding them, they will misguide them actively. Because people who are appointed on misguiding people, they are doing so very actively. But unfortunately, we who should be reforming them, we are very lazy in this action of ours. And deviant people and misguided people who lead people astray, they take full advantage of and benefit of this. And another moral lesson that we learn from this beautiful event is that the soil of the hoofs of the horse of Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wasalam was so sacred that when Samri put that soil in the mouth of the calf that he created from the ornaments in the mouth of a lifeless calf, it became to life. It became to life and started to talk. So we come to know that how sacred those things are which are associated and attached to the chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the soil of the hoofs of the horse of Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wasalam. Again, this is not something which is directly linked with Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wasalam, but it is just the soil which is linked to the hoofs of the horse of Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wasalam. So we can see that how great in dignity and status this soil in its own is, that as soon as Musa Samri puts it in the mouth of the calf, it starts to talk. Then imagine what would be the status and dignity and grandeur of those holy relics that are directly associated with the chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with Sahaba Karam alayhim ridwan, with blessed Anbiya Karam alayhim salatu wasalam, and with the Holy Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam. So we shall hold these holy relics that are very close to Awliya Karam rahimahumullah, to Sahaba Karam alayhim ridwan, to the blessed Prophets alayhim salatu wasalam. We shall hold them very close to us, and we shall hold them very dignified, and we should seek their blessings as blessings are showered through them. So if this is the state of the holy relics or any object that has any kind of association and affiliation with the chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then imagine the place where those chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are resting themselves. How sacred that place would be, and how many blessings would be showering on their blessed shrines. So we shall ensure that we hold them very close to our hearts, very close to our soul, and we respect them, we honor them, and we stay away from disrespecting them, and we stay away from those who disrespect them. And we shall always try to gain the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gain the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by presenting ourselves in their courts, by presenting ourselves on their blessed shrines. So dear viewers of Madani Channel, this was the story of the day. This was the story of the calf that Musa Samri, he built. And another beautiful lesson we gain is that we shall never be fearful from the hidden plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in regards to us, that we don't know what is written in our fate, in our decree. As Musa Samri, who was brought up by Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wasalam, he raised to be a disbeliever, a leader of disbeliever. And Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, who was raised by Fir'aun, he raised to be a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a dignified, a distinguished prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we don't know what our fate is, we don't know what our circumstances would be in future. So we shall always fear about our fate, about having a good end, and we shall always supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us with a good end when we pass away from this world. So our story of the day regarding the calf of Samri comes to an end, and inshallah we will come again in our new episode with a new story before you. Till then, take very good care of yourself and keep watching Madani Channel. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
The stories of Quran, the stories of Quran, the stories of the glorious Quran. The stories of Quran, the stories of Quran, the stories of the glorious Quran.